This episode is brought to you by my 10-week Fertility Awareness Mastery Group program. If you're listening in real time, new groups are forming in August of 2017. Reserve your spot today by heading over to fertilityfriday.com/group program. That's fertilityfriday.com/group program. This is the Fertility Friday podcast, episode number 151. Welcome to the 151st episode of the Fertility Friday podcast. Thank you for joining me today. I'm Lisa from fertilityfriday.com, and this is your source for information about the fertility awareness method and all things fertility. I am so excited to have you here with me today. I have a special episode for you, another installment of my fertility awareness reality series. This episode is so fun. You could tell that my guest, Stacey, and I have a lot of fun together. She's really funny, as I tell her throughout the whole interview. But yeah, so Stacey was one of the members of my most recent group program, and she faced a number of different challenges with her cycle. And it's really interesting because a lot of the challenges that she faced mirrored some of the challenges that I faced throughout the years. So for those of you who have listened to the show for a while, you'll kind of know about what that all looked like for me. But for those of you who are new to the show, the Cliff Notes version is that I struggled with heavy, painful periods for a number of years. And so it really touched me during our interview that it was actually something that I said in the podcast that made Stacey think that it was even possible to overcome that. Because before that, she just thought, this is how it is. It just has to be this way. My periods are always just going to be painful and heavy. So I'm really excited to share this interview with you and really dive in with Stacey. And so, of course, whenever I share my Fertility Awareness Reality series, similar to all the episodes that I share on the podcast, it's really important to keep in mind that these episodes are just intended to be for informational purposes. All of my clients have a team, which I talk about a lot on the show. And so I'm part of their team, but we have a professional relationship. And so none of the information that we talk about on the show is intended to be medical advice. And of course, you should always talk to your physician, practitioner who you're working with before making any changes. And I'm so excited to invite you to the newest round of my 10-week Fertility Awareness Mastery Group program. So this is a program that takes place over a 10-week period. And the intention of this program is to really immerse you into fertility awareness, to share with you the method, and to help you to gain confidence in your charting. So to help you to really understand what's happening, to really develop body literacy, to know when you are fertile, what all the different kinds of mucus are, why you need to know about them, how to observe it, chart it, and to be really confident each and every day, whether or not it is a fertile day or not a fertile day. But beyond using the method really confidently for birth control, also to really understand the intersection between your menstrual cycle and your health. A big part of the group is to really delve into the health aspect and also the charting aspect and how you can use your menstrual cycle chart as a tool to help you understand what's happening with your health. I always say that the menstrual cycle is the fifth vital sign of a woman's health and fertility. And in this 10-week program, you really get to see exactly what that means. One of the most common feedback, so the most common thing that the women who are part of the group tell me is how much they loved being able to see other women's charts, not only their own. What you're doing is you're really accelerating your learning, because when you're in a group with a bunch of different women at similar stages to you but facing different challenges, you get to see how a number of different challenges show up in the charts and affect their chart. And so that when you continue on in your reproductive life, you actually have all this knowledge to apply for the changes that you're going to see. Because no matter what is happening in your cycles right now, there is going to be a time when you enter into a new stage. So whether you're avoiding pregnancy and you're planning to start to try, whether you are pregnant and at some point you're going to have that baby and you're going to want to either space your pregnancies or prevent pregnancy for a while. Breastfeeding is a different phase of charting. Or whether you're, getting older and at some point you'll be entering into perimenopause and menopause. So we're all going to see shifts in our cycles throughout the years, and this class really helps you to prepare and understand what to do, because the fundamental belief and understanding behind charting and the method that I teach is that the whole point is to understand each and every day at the end of the day, am I fertile or am I not? And with that knowledge and understanding, you can really gauge yourself through all of the different stages of your fertility in your life. So I really look forward to seeing you in the program. And for more information, make sure to head over to fertilityfriday.com/group program. There's a limited number of spaces in the group, and I would love to have you as part of it. So make sure to apply as soon as you can, fertilityfriday.com/group program. Now let's jump into today's episode. I'm so excited to be here today with Stacey. Stacey was a member of my most recent group program, and let's just say we had a really good time together.
Yeah, we did.
So Stacey wanted to be part of the Fertility Awareness Reality series. Now I'm just going to put words in your mouth, Stacey, and you can tell me if I'm overstepping. But as an avid listener of the podcast, I know that she really wanted to share her story in the hopes that it might inspire or help someone listening. So I really appreciate you being here today, Stacey.
Thank you. And I appreciate that you're having me on the show.
Yeah, it's fun being on the other side, huh?
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah. So obviously in our call today, we're going to be talking a lot about your cycles. I know you have some questions, but I wanted to start just to give the audience a sense of who you are and what drew you to the fertility awareness method, what inspired you to join the group, and also what your menstrual cycle history has been like. So maybe we could start there. I know, but I'll ask you the questions so you can answer for the podcast.
Okay.
But have you used hormonal contraceptives before? You know, how long did you use them? How long have you been cycling naturally? We can start there.
Okay. I'll try not to be too long because this could be a very long story. But I started menstruating when I was 13, and it's always been very light and I guess pretty regular. But I was 13, so I wasn't really that good at keeping track. And then probably like a year later, my cramps started getting like really bad. And it was crazy. Like I was missing like 3 days of school every month. And so I went to the doctor. And of course, the doctor said, why don't you get on a pill? Even though I was like 16 at that point and I had only been cycling for 3 years. And they were like, no, the pill will help everything. It'll make everything in your life better. It's magical. And I mean, I was like, this is great. It sounded like the best thing in the world. So I was like, yeah, give me that pill. It cleared up my acne. It made my cramps bearable. I always knew when my period was going to come. So I thought it was amazing. So I was on from when I was 16 until now, and I'm 33. So basically all my life I've been on birth control. And then I got married like a year ago, and I really didn't want to be on the pill. I kept learning about it, and I kept feeling like I should probably see what my cycle is like, not on the pill. But I was really, really scared to get off the pill because I thought that I'm going to get off the pill. And then as soon as my husband, looks at me and from across the room, I'm going to get pregnant. So I was like, I don't want to get off the pill. So I started researching, I just Googled, what can I, natural birth control, or because I knew that I didn't like condoms. But I really didn't think there was anything. I mean, that I was taught that there was basically anything. There's condoms and there's the pill, and that's it. Those are your options. So I found your podcast, and it saved my life. Everybody out there, seriously, you're so lucky to have found this podcast. And I learned about fertility awareness, and I was like, is this real? Like, is this something? Like, is there really a way that I can not get pregnant and still have sex with my husband? Like, it just didn't seem like it could be real. And then I learned that basically I've been lied to my whole life, that I'm not fertile every minute of my life. So, that was a whole time of anger for me. I'm still angry about it. And now I'm off the pill. I've been off for like 5 cycles, I believe. And I feel like my period is regular, and it's definitely, regulating more and more. So that's where I am. I'm still like figuring it out. I mean, I haven't gotten pregnant, so hey, it works. So, so that's it, basically.
Well, and maybe we could share where you're at with that, because so you were part of my birth control group. And so in your case, you are in the stage of you're not trying right now.
Right. But I cannot try at all because I had back surgery and I'm not allowed to get pregnant. So this was very, very serious for me.
So in your case, you really wanted a baby though, like several months ago. So this is, I can't try right now. And so I'm, learning about your cycle but there are definite plans to start trying in the future. So maybe you can share where we're at with that.
As soon as I get the okay, I definitely want to try.
So I think your case is helpful to some of the women listening, because the way I structure the programs in such a way where we have women who are not trying and women who are trying, but there's always a mix of women in each group, because I know in the conception group, there were women in similar positions as you are who know they want to conceive in the next little while, but are definitely avoiding right now, actively avoiding. And so I think what's interesting then is that in both groups, in our group, we spoke a lot about preparing for pregnancy and getting the body ready.
We definitely did.
Yeah, even though it was a fully avoidance group, because I don't think everyone in the group did not have a close time horizon, but I think there were a fair number of women in the group who, even though it's not right now at all, do want to kind of have that on their radar for whether it's, in your case, a couple of months or a couple of years in the future. I think it's really fun because in both groups, a lot of similar topics come up, but from sometimes different angles.
Okay, yeah.
Maybe you can share your experience then. So after facing the straight up terror of coming off the pill. So let's talk a little bit about what that was like for you transitioning and where you're at right now with your comfort with the fertility awareness method.
Okay, well, when I first got off the pill and we said, okay, we're going to use the fertility awareness method. First of all, my husband was like, what are you doing? Like, if you get pregnant, you will ruin the work that you've done, the back surgery and all the work that you've done to heal, it'll be ruined. I'm like, yeah, I trust this. I think it's going to work. I think it's going to be okay. So it took a lot of, he was like, whatever, if you get pregnant, I guess, the Lord will be with us and we'll see what happens. But he wasn't very confident in it. I understood it in my head. Like I believed everything I had learned, but it's really hard to go from, okay, I believe this to I'm going to do it. So even though I was doing it, I'm on my 5th cycle, I believe, with the fertility awareness method. I'm towards the end of it. So it took me until now, like literally yesterday is the first time we didn't use the withdrawal. The first time, yesterday. So it's been like 5 months. So it took me a while to get from the fear and what has been pounded into my head since I was 12, since the teacher ever stood up and said, this is how your body works, to trusting what I learned about my body. So it took a little while. Even though 5 months isn't that long, like it's pretty long to still be afraid.
Well, I want to normalize that, Stacey. And I think that it really speaks to a lot of different things. One of the things that it speaks to is your own intuition. And I find that every woman that I work with enters into this space of fertility awareness from a slightly different perspective. So in your case, you have a serious medical restriction on conception. So it's really a no-go.
Yeah.
And so it makes sense to me that it took you a little bit longer on the progression. So one of the things that we spoke about in our group, and one of the things that I go through with all of my clients, is a progression. So when you first start learning the fertility awareness method, there's this idea that it's kind of like learning something like anything else, which it's not. So there's this idea that you're going to kind of go from not really doing it to doing it right away, right, full throttle, all of the days and all of that, like pre-op, post-op and whatever. But it doesn't work like that. So Stacey, as you know from the conversations that we had in our group, there is a suggested progression of how to go through, and it actually mimics our natural intuitive sense about how to proceed and how to get ourselves to trusting it. So the analogy that I always give is if you think about going into like a super hot pool or something, like a hot tub or something like that, typically you dip your feet in a little to see how hot it is. And then you gradually kind of go in, but you don't like just jump in head under and the whole thing.
Right.
And so it's really important to normalize that, because there is a natural progression. We all have to work through our fear of getting pregnant. So every single woman who transitions to the fertility awareness method can attest to that, because you can read the books, you can understand the science, you can understand the whole interaction of mucus and the cervix and the hormones, and you can start charting and you can start seeing those shifts. You can start seeing the shift in temperature and the change in your mucus. But ultimately, it's not until you actually have like unprotected sex in your on a post-ovulatory kind of confirmed dry day for the first time that you really test the method, because there's a difference between what you think in your head and what is real in the world, like a tangible thing. So I just want to validate that. And I'm really glad that you said that, because I'm sure that there's so many women listening that are like, yes, I have read all the things, but like, you mean to tell me I'm actually supposed to, like, not supposed to, but you mean to tell me I can actually go unprotected on an like, actually, I'm like, he ejaculates inside of my body unprotected.
Yeah, that was he was like, wait, really? I'm like, yes, it's okay. It's okay.
Well, so, I mean, I have your chart up here. So I think what's important to mention to everybody, and also to kind of go back to what we spoke about several times in our group, is that there is the progression. And so the first stage before you ever go unprotected, and I say this even if you have charting experience. So if it's a new client working with me who has used a different method and is transitioning to the method that I teach, it's really important to give yourself one full cycle with the method, so that you can, and not 30 days, like a full cycle, meaning ovulation and menstruation type of thing, so that you can really see how it works. And then there's a lot of different skills that you have to master before you can go unprotected. Like you have to be really confident in being able to confirm ovulation. We'll talk about that a little bit more, because I know you've mentioned that you've been having double peaks. And so you really have to, first of all, get that confidence in being able to identify ovulation, to confirm it, to be really comfortable with your mucus observations, to be really comfortable with your temperature, to know how to draw a baseline, to know how to, all of the things, but to be very confident in that, and to know the difference between like a true menstruation and an abnormal bleed of some kind. So there's all these different skills that you have to master. And then the first stage of it is actually after you've confirmed ovulation, all of your signs line up, your temperature, your mucus, your cervix position, all of those things line up, and you are 100% confident. This is not guessing. It's obvious, and we're all confident. That is the first step. Then having sex on the post-ovulatory dry days is the first stage. And after you've kind of mastered that, conquered that, and there's a lot of skills to learn, differentiating between cervical mucus, semen, arousal fluid, all those different types of skills that you basically learn along the way. Once you start to get really comfortable with all of that, it's only then that you should even be considering having a protected sex in your pre-ovulatory phase. So it's really a progression that typically would take several months if you actually go through it properly.
Okay.
So how was it the first time? Did you freak out a little bit after, or did you feel okay?
I mean, I felt okay. It had been so long since we'd been able to do that. So it was just like, okay. I mean, we both were kind of like, just like, all right, I feel pretty confident. Like that's the thing I keep telling him, like, I feel confident. I keep like showing him the chart and saying, see here, this is where I ovulated and this is where. So that means that we're post-ovulatory and so it's fine. And he's like, okay. So like, we're still getting used to it. Yeah. That's basically.
Yeah.
So yes, once I actually get my period, then I can say, see, I'm not pregnant.
Well, yeah. And it's interesting. I went through that as well, be it 15 years ago, but the very first time, and you kind of know in your mind, you're like, okay, everything's lined up. But then when you actually do it, it's like, oh, this actually works.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, yeah, so I'm really glad that you shared that, because the fear is real. It's real because it goes against everything we've ever been taught. So it's a lot of unlearning that has to take place. And I think part of that too is that we're talking about going unprotected, but you're in a situation where you've gone through the whole 10-week program. We went through the rules. You have been charting several cycles. You are really good with your mucus observations and all that. So this is not a situation where you were like, I think it's like, I think you were in a situation where you basically know when is absolutely a no-go. And so I feel like there's a lot of power in that. It is possible to get pregnant from unprotected sex, obviously on a fertile day. And so you really have to know when those days are, and you really have to be clear on that in order to be relying on the method and feeling really confident about it. All right. So maybe we can kind of jump into it. We've kind of started already, but I know you had a couple of questions about your charts, and I have your charts up until July 4th. So.
Okay. Right. Basically, if you look at every chart except the first chart, because with the first chart, it was just all over the place. But with the second chart, I mean, I have a bunch of peaks, but you see there's that first peak there.
Are we looking at May to June?
I guess we can look at May to June. So yeah, the one that's May to June. So you see how before that, oh, you can see, okay, great. Yes, that's great. So now I can see it. Okay. So you see how before, like on cycle day 8, there was a peak there.
Well, so on cycle day 8, we have a temperature. Your temperature is a little higher that day.
Yes. And basically that's what happens every cycle. Like every cycle, there's a place where my temperatures get higher and then it gets lower. And I'm like, oh, I think I ovulated because all the signs are there. And then it goes up like a few days later, then my temperature goes up even higher. And I'm like, okay, wait, which one? Like which one was the time that I ovulated? Because then with the second peak, even though I think that's the second peak is the time that I ovulate, that's not usually where I see the rest of the signs. So it's just like, I don't know why that happens.
Well, let's talk about it a little bit. I know with you and I have spoken quite a bit about temperature. So as I'm sure anybody who's listening can just make perfect sense of in their mind, having come off of back surgery recently, sleeping isn't always the most relaxing, constant experience for you. So I know that you have a hard time sleeping and often kind of rolling around a little bit at night and getting up a couple of times. So yeah, it's kind of like the one thing we want to preface it with is that there's a lot of things that can disturb temperature. It's one of the questions I get a lot. I get it a lot in the Facebook group. I think you're in the Facebook group.
Yeah.
I
am.
So I'll tag you in this when I release it.
Okay.
So one of the things that about temperature, and as we got into it more, and I know that you even have a temperature marked here on day 14, you have it circled because you know it's a little bit questionable. So
yeah, I woke up. I definitely woke up that day in the middle of the night. So I was like, I don't think I'm going to trust that one.
So from that, when we're coming from that perspective, knowing already that your sleep is a little bit disturbed, I then take your temperatures with that in mind. So what we really want to watch for are patterns. So it's kind of like what you're saying is like, I saw this peak, but what I always say is, well, wait 3 days. So what I always say is when you have a true sustained shift in temperature that happened as a result of ovulation, it's very obvious and anybody should be able to look at your chart and see it. So as the audience is listening, you can't see Stacey's chart. So I'll do my best to describe it. But on day 8, and so this is coming off of your period. So also the temperatures during your period, we can't really give them too much credence. So they can be kind of up and down. So I in my mind, I almost don't see them when I'm looking at the chart. Because I kind of just disregard the period temperatures.
Okay.
Because, you're coming down off of your hormones are regulating again. Everything's kind of resetting. So sometimes the temperatures can be a little off. And so on day 8, you have this one temperature that's higher than a lot of the other ones. But then on day 9, it goes down a little. And then by day 10, we're kind of back into regular territory. So if you think of it always in terms of, well, wait 3 days, then by the 3rd day after, you can see that you didn't ovulate.
Okay. Yeah, that makes it more clear.
Yeah, because ovulation is obvious. And so if you ovulated, those temperatures are going to stay up because it's not magic. It's progesterone.
Okay.
And so
Okay.
if you actually did ovulate, then your progesterone levels will rise, and that will cause a sustained shift in your basal body temperature. That will be obvious. So even if your partner has barely any idea of anything, your partner should be able to look at your chart and see that, oh, your temperature, like, and you should be able to draw a line so you can actually take a ruler and put it on your chart. So on day 16, your temperature rose and then it just stayed high. Like, so now it has this whole new pattern. And so you can actually take a ruler and draw a line. And other than a couple of temperatures that are potentially questionable, so the one that you've circled and then the other one on day 8, pretty much all of those temperatures are below the line. So the rule is that.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the other thing to mention, because we're only talking about temperatures, is that even if you had thought that you had ovulated on that day because of that temperature, your mucus didn't dry up.
Okay.
So your mucus, so on day 8, you had some non-peak. On day 9, you had some non-peak. On day 10, you had some peak. So because it stretched more than an inch. And then on day 12, again, you had some peak. So all of, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's also making it more clear. Okay.
So
I just want to put a point in there while we're here that before I joined the group, I didn't plan on joining the group. Like, I was like, I'm not rich. I don't have any extra money, and I'm just going to do this myself, and I'm going to be good, and it's all going to be good. But honestly, as soon as I started, I was like, this is crazy. I don't know what I'm doing. And even now, like, even though it's not hard. It's not something that's hard to do. It's these little clarifications that you really do need. Like when you're doing fertility awareness, even I've heard this on your show so many times, but I'm just like, whatever, I'm good, I'm special, I can do this myself. But like, honestly, when you get into it, there are all these little things that you're like, wait, is just for clarification, just to be confident. Like, did I ovulate, or is that mucus, or just those little questions? Like, it's really, really good to have somebody that you can email and be like, look at this mucus. Is this mucus or not? It's really good to have somebody. So all the people listening, I would really recommend the group or a one-on-one or just something, because like, as you can see, 5 cycles later, I'm still like, now I feel like a light bulb has gone off, that you're like, oh yeah, your mucus didn't dry up. And even though you've said that, it's like that clicked now. And I'm like, oh, okay, now that's way more clear. Like, now I feel like this whole chart makes sense to me now that you said that.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, Stacey. And I mean, for me personally, I've shared on the podcast a number of times. So I'm a pretty type A kind of do-it-yourself kind of girl. And so I, read Taking Charge of Your Fertility, and I started charting. And I always say, like, I thought I knew everything. But even with that said, I was part of a charting circle. So every month I would go and meet up with a bunch of women who were charting, and they, look at each other's charts and do some education. And you just can't understate how much you learn. And then also when I went through the training, the fertility awareness educator training the first time 10 years ago, again, I was like, oh, I know everything. But the amount of detail with cervical mucus and the level of confidence that you can gain when you can truly identify the difference between a dry day and a day with mucus, and all of the little nitpicky questions that come up, to truly get to the level of confidence that I am now. I don't know that I would have ever gotten to that level without having some support. And that's why I'm so passionate about it, because I want women to be successful with it. I want for the listeners to know that it's a truly valid method and you can be really confident in it. But the level of efficacy, so there have been studies that have been done that have shown that this, the symptothermal method is up to 99.6% effective. However, to get that level of effectiveness when you're actually having days of unprotected sex, to truly get that level of accuracy, there are so many little things that you need to know. But with that being said, there are some unicorns out there, some women who have potentially never really been on hormonal birth control, or who've been on it like a long time ago. and whose cycles are just fairly easy to read. And so if you fall into one of those categories, you might wonder, well, why is it so challenging? Like it's obvious. I have dry days, I have a couple days of mucus, and then I ovulate and it's easy. So why would women have a difficult time? And there's so many different scenarios, especially having just come off of hormonal contraceptives. Your cycles are quite regular, as you said, and you've been ovulating and they came back quite quickly. And so having come off of hormonal birth control often makes your mucus hard to read.
Yeah. That's definitely what I found.
I just want to kind of just check in with you. So on days 13, 14, and 15, so you have those marked as dry days with the shiny.
Yeah.
And then you have purple stickers for mucus. So I just wanted to check in with you. So if it was truly dry and there was nothing on the tissue that you can pick up, then those should actually be green days.
Okay, because I thought that the count of 3 after mucus had to be purple, but it's not.
This is just like a semantics color thing. So the count of 3 those days are considered fertile. So, so on Stacey's chart on day 12, she had her last day of peak mucus. And then on day 13, 14, and 15, those were dry days. So those days are actually green, but they're fertile because they're within that count of 3.
Right, but it should be green with a triangle.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll remember that for next time.
And then I see that you're using some yellow stickers. So tell me a little bit about that.
I was using yellow because I had like a yeast infection or a bacterial infection, and I would have mucus, but it wasn't, like I could tell it wasn't actual fertile mucus. Like it was just, and it was yellow. So I knew that was because I had the infection at that time. Okay. So, when I read in the book, you're supposed to ask your HRHP if you can do that. But I put yellow just because I didn't want to put that it was dry, because it wasn't technically dry. It was mucus-like, but I wanted to separate it from normal mucus, I guess.
Okay. Well, when you wiped, was the sensation dry or was it smooth?
It was dry.
And then on the tissue, you had something. Were you able to actually pick it up?
No, it was like shiny and yellow.
Okay.
So,
that makes sense. From your description of it, so with kind of that distinction between mucus and cell slough, if there's nothing that you can actually, like if there's really nothing that you can, not that you have to be able to stretch it lots, but if there's no kind of lotiony stuff that you can actually pick up off of the tissue, then it's probably vaginal cell slough. And if you know that you have a yeast infection, you might just have more of it. And so that's why you're getting that shiny, and it's kind of there, but there's still nothing you can actually pick up.
Okay.
So you can do whatever you want, right? To help you to kind of like notate it, right? Like, so far be it from me to say don't use yellow stamps for that, because it totally makes sense. So the yellow stamps in the traditional sense of the word, like, so the fertility awareness educators listening will be like, okay, so this is how we use yellow stamps. Typically the way that they're quote unquote used. So in your case, when you're on the days that you don't have mucus, you are dry. So on the days that outside of your fertile window, when you're doing your observations, you're dry. So when you're wiping, you have a dry sensation and you don't have any mucus. And so we would refer to those days outside of your fertile window as your basic infertile pattern. And so in your case, your basic infertile pattern is dry. And so I've worked with a number of clients who outside of their fertile window, their basic infertile pattern is like a little bit of like pasty cloudy.
Okay.
So for them, just like what you said, you're like, it's obviously different to when I have my mucus observations before ovulation. And it's similar, except I've had a couple clients who just don't really have any dry days or very few. And after they've confirmed ovulation, their mucus shifts to this pasty, cloudy.
Okay.
And so when that continues, like there's a lot of things that we can do to support the cervix, cervical health, to improve that. We've spoken about that in the group a couple of times.
Yes.
A couple of times. But while we're kind of waiting for all of that to work, then, so just so that you know the kind of traditional sense of like yellow stamps. And also that could come into play for you later on, because many women find themselves in a situation like that after they've conceived and had their children and are in the postpartum, the hormone levels stimulated by breastfeeding sometimes just generate a basic. So instead of being dry all the time, you have a little bit of that pasty cloudy all the time. And so some women, not all women, some women have that postpartum. So anyway, so you might have an opportunity to use yellow stamps the traditional way in the future.
Okay.
So in terms of like sticking to the method, I would say that you could just put those as dry, but then you're going to put your 4Y for yellow. But if it's easier for you just to notate it like that, then that's totally fine.
Yes, that makes things much more clear.
Yeah. Because then you would have from day 13 on all green, 13, yeah. All green stickers.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yes, my chart is not a mystery anymore.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I was just counting your luteal phase-ish. Days that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So, yeah, it looks like it's about 10 days in this chart.
Yes, that's the norm. That's usually what it is. So I'm trying to, do what I can to make it longer. I'm about to start seed cycling.
Oh, that's exciting.
So I'm pretty excited. My family thinks I'm crazy because I'm always doing something. I'm like, you'll see that this is gonna change everything. But I mean, they thought I was crazy for even doing this. And now they see I'm not pregnant. So they're like, okay, you're probably not crazy. So this seems to be working.
I'm sure they say it with love. You're probably not
yes,
crazy.
They do. They don't. I mean, yeah, they care about me. So
well, I mean, just by being yourself and doing what you need to do, what's best for your body, for your fertility, you give others permission to do the same. So just by doing that, I always have a few things to say. One of them is that what I have found is that sometimes the person who is the most thorny about it, like the person who is just like, I can't believe you're doing that. This is crazy. The person who's totally like beside themselves at the thought of what you're doing is often the person who becomes a fertility awareness educator in the future.
That's so crazy.
Obviously, like not every time, but I have found that in a couple different areas of life, because what the reaction is really about is their own level of understanding, and it's challenging their own core beliefs so strongly that it makes them uncomfortable, and that reflects itself on the way that they're reacting. And so the person who is in the most disbelief about it and most beside themselves is often the person that kind of like ends up coming around. So it's kind of like the most unlikely thing. So, and then just by you doing it, you'll find in the coming years, here and there, random friends will just start coming to you and they'll just ask you about it. Even if they seem like they're super opposed to it, they'll be like, so you're really not pregnant? But you guys use condoms though, right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
So, quick
I've
question for
definitely
you.
gotten that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. You'll be surprised as you continue in the coming years how people respond. I do want to ask you, are you able to take a picture of your chart with the last 2 weeks?
Yes.
Or maybe you just hold it
can.
up.
I'm just gonna. I can. Well, I have it on my phone, but it's Kindara, the one I have.
That's fine.
So I can send it to you, or I can hold it up. I don't know how clear it is.
Maybe you can send. It's easy. It's pretty easy to send.
Okay. Yeah.
So I'm looking now at Stacey's June to July chart, and I know one of the questions you had for me, Stacey, was about the double peak. And so because I can only see half of your chart, what I see is that you had a couple of days of peak mucus, but it doesn't appear that you went on to ovulate after.
Right. See that, and that's one of the questions. I was like, did I ovulate at this time or did I ovulate? So like, yeah, I definitely, now that you've said that, I sent it. So it'll be, I guess, a couple of minutes. Now that you've said that, my chart definitely looks clearer. Like, to me, it's obvious that I didn't ovulate on that day 12, I guess. That's what day it was.
Yeah.
So I would say I probably ovulated on day like 14 or so, like 2 days after that, or like 3 days after that.
Okay, so I'm going to put the Kindara beside so then we have day 12. So basically what happened, to give the audience a bit of a visual, is that you had your period, and then you had several dry days, and then you had a couple of days of peak. So peak, obviously, very obviously peak, clear and stretchy and whatnot.
Yes.
And then it dried up, which would be an indication of potential ovulation, but we see that your temperature did not, there's one day where your temperature is a little higher, but it did not stay high. So day 12, your temperature is a little bit higher. Day 13, it drops. Your mucus does go away, but the temperature does not follow. And then it looks as though your temperature rises on day 16, but I don't. So because I'm looking at the Kindara.
Because it's, so like I usually, let me just look at the notes, because usually what I do is I use this in like my daily thing, because I'm just putting notes every day, and then I go back and I fill in my chart after. So let's see, we're looking at day 14, 16. I didn't have mucus again. Like basically since that day I've been dry, just dry.
And there was one thing that you had mentioned at the top of the call, because I know we spoke about this a little bit in the group. So you had, one of the reasons you went on hormonal birth control in the first place was because of cramps.
Yes.
So maybe share.
Definitely. That was like the main reason. Oh yeah, I definitely should talk about that, because my cramps were, I got used to them. So I think that my description of them would not be accurate because I had them every month. But basically, I would describe them as probably, not that bad. But I literally had to stay home for 3 days. So obviously they were pretty bad. I learned how to deal with them. You talk about the window, like I definitely know there's a window. Like when you first feel a little something, you have to now start taking your 800 milligram ibuprofen, because if you don't take them within that window, you might as well just eat gumdrops, because it's not doing anything and you're just in pain. So after a while, like after a few years, I figured out how to manage them. I mean, even on the pill, like I still had to do that. It was just that it was bearable and I could survive my life. I could live and continue like being productive, but it was pretty bad. Like, and then coupled with my back, I had back issues. Like every time I had my period, it just really messed up my back, and it was just terrible. And when I started listening to your podcast, probably it would be like 6 cycles ago, because I'm on my 5th cycle. So I said, you know what? She says it's possible. I don't believe her, but I want to believe her. So I'm going to try what she's saying. She's saying that I can help my cramps to be bearable or to go away. And I was like, it's worth it. It's worth a shot. So I've tried everything else, and I changed the way I eat. I started eating more for like nutritional value. So even though I started eating a lot of high fat foods, which I was like, okay, I definitely don't want to get fat, but I started getting raw milk and eating a lot of raw cheese and eating a lot of like fermented foods, because I do have an issue with digestion. So I felt like that really was contributing to it. That's another amazing thing about fertility awareness. It shows you so many other things, like other than, it's not just, my period. It's like, it's showing you everything in your body, which is so weird, because I would feel that people would have known this. Like, if you could just look at your chart and it could tell you so many things. I mean, why don't we all chart? Like, it just makes sense. There's so many things I can just say, I see this. Maybe this is going on, and I can go to the doctor and I can say, I feel like this is going on, and I can get it treated. So it's just so interesting. So anyway, ever since I've changed my diet, my cramps are like not there. It's weird. Every month I'm like waiting, like, is this going to be the month that they're like, gotcha. You thought you were good, but here I am. But it hasn't happened. Like, it's really, I mean, I don't know when it's going to become normal, but it's never normal. Like, every time I see my temperature go down in my chart, I'm like, oh, it's coming. Those cramps are going to get me. And then they're not there. So it's just really weird. Like, I told my friend about it and she was like, that's impossible. Like, she also suffers from cramps. And we both just every month we were just suffering and just not going to work and missing out on fun activities. And so when she sees me and I'm like, oh, I'm on my period, she's like, what? And you're here? I haven't convinced her to do anything yet, but I think she's on her way she's definitely considering it now because she's like, this is crazy. Like, I can't believe that you're walking around and you're on your period. So yeah, that has definitely, who would have thought that, just getting some raw milk could change somebody's life that much? Like, but it's crazy.
Well, Stacey, you have definitely done more than just drinking raw milk. So I know you've said a number of times, like, my friends think I'm crazy, but it's because over the past several months, you've really done different meat, sourcing natural hormone-free meat. I know that's one of the things you've been doing, eating more fresh vegetables, kind of getting rid of some of the processed foods, combating the addiction to sugar. Honestly, Stacey, when we were in the group, I felt like we were like, I don't know, like lost twins or something, because so many parts of my story, my own personal experience, are mirrored in the things that you've experienced. Obviously not everything, but a lot of it. So the cramp and the pain, like, I could tell you that although it is normal for me now not to have cramps, it took several years for that to be, like, for me, because I can relate exactly to what you're saying, where I'm literally like standing there kind of like looking around like, okay, like, when's the pain gonna kick in? And now it's to the point that I literally sometimes I know when my period is coming, right? Like, but I don't know the hour. Yeah. Right. But I know when it's coming. But with that said, like, I'll go to the bathroom and have nothing. I'll be like, oh, like, no.
Yeah. Before, I've never used to be surprised by my period because I'm in pain for 3 days. I'm like, oh, that period is coming. Well, yeah. It wanted to alert me.
Yeah, it would have come with a bang. So even like the pain would even come before the period. So I would be in intense, sharp, all of it, like and it would kind of come on really quick. Like, it's literally like you feel a tingle and then it's like on with the pain.
Right. Yep.
So
exactly.
I'm really glad that you shared that because, I mean, the thing is that not every woman, there's a lot of women out there who have had severe pain for a really long time. And this is not to say that you're going to make 2 dietary changes and like the next week, everything's going to be fine. For some women, it happens faster than others. And I know for myself, I made gradual changes over quite a while before I actually started to see the changes. But with that being said, if I knew then what I know now, and I had implemented all of the changes kind of in a shorter period of time, I know that I would have seen an improvement faster. So it's kind of like one of the benefits of our exchange and working together is that I can give you the like brain dump that took me 15 years to develop. So you get like this super quick kind of, road.
Exactly. Like every time I listened to one of your podcasts, I was like, oh, I'm doing that next. Like, everybody thought I was crazy. I was like, well, the first thing I need to do is get off the pill. That was already, everybody was like, are you sure? Like, I'm like, if I'm going to stay on the pill, then there's really no point to anything else that I'm doing because the pill is preventing me from absorbing the nutrients. So now I'm basically, it's like pouring water into a bucket, but there's a huge hole in the bottom. Like, what are you doing? Are you doing anything useful? So I knew that was the first thing I had to do. And then, everything followed from there. I mean, I stopped drinking out of plastic water bottles and, all those things that the xenoestrogens, I mean, that's overwhelming. I mean, I'm still combating xenoestrogens because they're everywhere. But I feel like that was a major thing where I was trying to avoid, fake hormones to try to level out my hormones. I feel like that on top of the nutrition, like really, really made a huge difference.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the last thing that I just want to check in with you about. So in our last conversation went a lot differently. We spent a lot of time talking about digestion.
Yes.
But I mean, what came out of our conversation was really just being cognizant, not only of eating from a nutrient density standpoint, real food and all that kind of stuff, but also focusing on eating in a way that balances blood sugar. So how have you found that? I think my suggestion was to kind of tackle breakfast first. So maybe you could share your experience so far.
So basically, the last time we spoke, you suggested, because you felt that I was eating a very grain heavy diet. I mean, I'm from the West Indies, and anyone who doesn't know what that means, basically it means that you eat rice all day.
And bread. Bread and rice.
Yes, rice and bread. Yeah. Exactly. So and the thing is, I mean, my husband is from Michigan, so he's American. And so he never understood, like if he made, let's say, baked chicken and he made potatoes with, to him, that's the starch. And I'm like, no, there's always rice. If you want to have another starch too, that's great. Double up, triple up. Like, but the rice has to be there. Like there has to be rice, not potatoes, rice. So he always found that weird. I never thought it was weird because, you know, my whole family's just like that. And all my friends, because we're all West Indian. So I eat rice bread like all day. And I had told you that, and TMI, sorry, listeners, I don't poop that much. I could go probably the whole month without pooping, and that would be normal for me. And then I would only poop like the week of my period, I guess everything going on in there. Then I would, that week, I would poop every day. But then other than that, no poop. That's just my life. That's just what I've been used to. So you suggested that I try to go grain free for 30 days. And I was like, that's not going to happen. But I did try it. I didn't try it that same day. So today, let me see. This was day, because I'm charting it. So it's 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So today is 14 days grain free.
Oh my gosh.
I know. I mean,
wow.
I've survived, and more surprisingly, so did my husband. Because without rice, like, I just feel like I want to die and others should also die. But it's been like, I definitely, like, the thing is, what's really strange is that I would dream about eating grain. Like I would wake up and think I ate bread, or I would wake up and think I ate a bowl of rice. And I'm like, oh no, I ruined everything. And then I would realize, oh, it was a dream. So that's how crazy I am. Like that's how crazy it's been trying to be grain free. But honestly, I've pooped almost every day.
Wow.
Sometimes twice. I'm like, is this happening? I'm looking around like, am I in some kind of alternate universe?
Okay,
I am so serious. I started charting it.
Because we had this conversation 14 days ago.
Yes.
Because it was...
Yes.
So,
it was the 5th of July or the 4th of July. I think it was actually the 4th of July.
Yeah, we're recording this on the 18th of July, which is obviously not when it's going to air. But Stacey...
Yes. And I started the next day. The next day was the first day.
So because some of the listeners are listening and thinking and resonating like, well, I don't go every day either. And some of the listeners are like, what do you mean you went 3 weeks without having a, like, how did, like, so some of the, so there's a range of women listening, but I know when we spoke about that, that's a really big deal not to be eliminating regularly. And so again, like with this whole like lost twin thing. So I'm also West Indian. My parents are from the West Indies. And so I also grew up eating rice every day and eating bread several times a day. It wasn't like once a day. It was all day, every day. It was like, I don't know how to eat breakfast without bread. I don't know how to eat lunch without bread. And I don't know how to eat dinner without rolls. Like, I don't understand. Or
snack without bread.
Everything had bread in it. Everything had bread. And so I remember when I first, when I first thought about giving up bread, the first thought I had was, well, what am I going to eat? How am I going to do this? Because everything is bread. And so I really resonated with you. But for me, I think the experiment is really important in your case, because I also grew up thinking that, because I was constipated regularly, like not all the time, but like this is TMI as well. When I used to eat bread all the time, But I thought that the reason that I was constipated was because I would eat red meat. So I spent a lot of time trying to cut out red meat because I thought red meat is what's making me constipated. That's what it is. And so I would try to eat chicken and fish and stuff. And I did that for a number of years, but it didn't really change anything. Like every couple of days I would, take some magnesium to loosen things up. And so it wasn't until I eliminated grains, like bread in particular. No, I still eat rice. But it wasn't until I stopped eating bread for a while that I realized that it was actually the bread. And even now, if I ever inadvertently eat some bread, or like I was just on holidays, and so I didn't have as much control over what I ate. And so there were a couple of times when I ate something that had bread in it. But I noticed in terms of like the bowel movements that when I eat bread, it really kind of tightens things up.
Yeah, it's really weird. Like I actually had like 3 days. Well, first I was pooping every day, like since I stopped eating grain. And then I had like 3 days randomly where I didn't poop, and I like felt uncomfortable, which normally that's my norm. To not poop is, I normally don't poop. But I actually noticed it, and I was like, oh my gosh, am I getting used to like pooping every day? That's weird. But it's made a huge difference in just, I feel how comfortable I feel, I guess, because I can compare to those days that I didn't poop and I just felt like I had to go and then I wasn't going. So I feel like that's just how I felt all the time normally. There's definitely going to be a test because my husband and I already signed up and paid for a festival, which is a Jollof festival, which is an African rice festival. So
of course
it's gonna be, I don't know what's
for the African rice
yeah,
festival,
exactly.
Stacey.
Like rice. I was like, oh heck yeah. Like my husband was like, oh, so what do you think about going to this Jollof festival? I'm like, I don't know. Like, what is it? And he was like, oh, it's rice. I was like, oh heck yeah, we're definitely going to that. Rice all day. I'll pay $200 for that. But now I'm like worried. Like now it's in like a week. I'm like, I don't know. I'm worried about how I'm gonna feel. Even though I'm really excited because I really miss rice, I'm just kind of concerned. So I'm gonna see. I don't know if I could do this forever, but I know that I feel better eating like this.
Well, I think, as we kind of bring our call to close today, I feel like the message isn't like, and we spoke about this too in our call. So this isn't me saying like wheat is bad or rice is bad, although there are lots of sources out there that would indicate that it may not be the best thing for everybody. So this isn't about whether a food is good or bad. This is about developing the awareness of how the foods affect you and really starting to understand and appreciate how important it is to have normal, regular bowel function, and also how much your diet can impact your bowels. And also what I found with a number of clients, and we spoke about this, is that when you have some sort of, it doesn't have to be like significant health challenge, but when you have some sort of health challenge. So in your case, it's the infrequent bowel movements. It becomes normal, and you don't really except unless you're like me, who talks about things, functions, fluids on a regular basis. Most people are not talking about their bodily fluids on a regular basis. And so you're not really talking to people. When was the last time you talked to your girlfriend about how frequently you bowel? Like I don't.
Yeah.
No one does. And so my observation and the work that I do with clients is just that sometimes you need another person just to kind of have the openness to talk about things of this nature with. Typically in private conversation, but we're having a private public one. But also you kind of need to be around. Also, you need to have a little bit of support sometimes, because what becomes normal for you, just because you're experiencing it regularly, sometimes you just need the support of someone to just say like, this isn't normal. And I find that that's one of the things that in my work with clients, often I'm the first one to kind of, they've been to doctors, they've been to natural. And I mean, in your case, you've been to all kinds of people. When was the last time someone asked you? Well, I feel like that's one of the benefits of us being able to have that time together, which is really, and for other women, it's different things. There's been so many different experiences my clients have had where it's kind of passed off as normal, but you kind of need someone to be like, whoa, 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 not normal.
Yeah. Like, I mean, my doctor definitely knows, but she never, I feel like in normal, I guess, medicine, like they don't look at the interaction between different systems in your body. They're just like, okay, this is this system, this is that system, and they're separate and they don't affect each other, which really doesn't make sense because obviously everything affects everything. So,
well, and if you have been having such painful periods for such a long time, I mean, if we think about the interaction between xenoestrogens and hormones and things like that, a big part of your body's natural process is to get them out. And so, our body can only eliminate in a few different ways. One of them is through our skin. One of them is coming out of like our bowels. And so if we're not eliminating regularly, then that means that there's a lot of recirculation happening. So it directly affects menstrual health if your digestion is off. So I just want to say to kind of, wrap up our conversation around, because I know we could talk about digestion all day because it's so important and also something you've been struggling with for years. But I just want to kind of bring it back for anyone who's listening who doesn't get the magnitude of the situation. How many years has this been the norm for you to have bowel movements like 1 week out of the month?
As long as I can remember.
And in 14 days, you have pooped how many out of the 14?
9.
Okay.
And then like after I missed 3, I pooped twice, which never happens. I never poop twice in a day. So I pooped twice the next day and I was like, oh, wow, this is new. This is crazy.
So in 14 days, essentially in the digestion, regular bowel portion of your life, you made more progress than you have in
32 years.
Okay.
Basically. Yeah.
The power of food. So I just want, if ever you kind of are feeling down, because I know we're not going to like continue to work together forever, because part of the work I do is to give you the tools to go out there and feel more confident sorting it out. I just want you to remember that. That didn't just happen. That was something that you did. You chose to do that. You sent me a picture of your breakfast the following day,
yeah.
which looked really good. I wanted to go over to your house because you said your husband's a chef, and I was like, oh, that looks so good.
Yes.
That's a really big deal, Stacey. And I'm very, very encouraged and happy to see and to hear how much I'm impressed. Good job, Stacey.
Thank
I don't
you.
even have words.
Yay. Yeah, I'm really excited about it. Yes.
We're going to go there.
I'm going to make a shirt that says that.
All right. Well, before we go too much down the toilet, really bad pun.
Oh my gosh.
I know, I'm really good at the bad puns.
That was really good.
So to kind of wrap us up today then, what would you want, so someone who's listening to the show, what would you want to tell them? Like, what are your final thoughts for anyone who's listening and is on this path and is doing their own thing to improve their cycles and their health?
Okay, well, if there was just one thing that I could say, it would probably be get off the pill. That would be the biggest thing. I know that I feel like the pill is misrepresented. And so I feel like it's good for what it's supposed to do. And basically what it does is it makes you infertile. So if they told you, okay, if you want to be infertile, get on the pill, then I think that would be, then women would be more aware of what is actually happening. In case you guys haven't heard much of this show, I mean, the pill does a lot of things. Like it messes with your cervical mucus, your ability to even make fertile cervical mucus. It stops you from absorbing nutrients. It doesn't make your body think it's pregnant, which is what they tell us. It makes your body think it's in menopause. So if that's fine with you, and that's the thing, if that's fine with you, if you're like, I never want to have kids, I'm good. I mean, there are all other dangers, but just in terms of fertility, being on the pill is really just counterintuitive to, if that's your goal to eventually have kids, I would just suggest not to be on the pill. There are other things you can do. That would be my major message. And that's been my message to everyone since I started listening to the show. And also, you have more power than you think you have. A lot of times you go on the pill because you feel, I know I did, I felt powerless. Like, I'm just so fertile. And if I sit on my boyfriend's lap, I'm going to be pregnant. So I need to do something to fight this endless fertility that I have. And then when you learn about it, you realize you have a lot more power than you think you have. This journey has been very empowering for me. I can take my temperature and I can just check when I'm in the bathroom and check my cervix when I'm in the shower. And it becomes a routine. It's not that big a deal as it seems when you first start. And I can know with certainty whether or not I'm fertile. And I can make a decision about whether or not I'm going to have kids. I don't have to give that power away to the people making a pill, the people who don't care about me. Nobody's going to care about you more than you care about you. So that would be my message.
Thank you, Stacey. Those are incredible words to end on. I don't even have to say anything. Thank you. As you can tell, Stacey and I have a lot of fun together. Stacey, you're so funny.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, I feel the same about you. Yes. If we lived in the same country, yeah, I would be stalking you. I will be at your house every day.
Yeah, we would be having so much fun. Yes. Well, thank you so much for being on the show, Stacey. It was a pleasure. And I know that this episode is going to be so helpful for the listeners.
I hope so. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's episode with Stacey. You'll find the show notes page for this episode at fertilityfriday.com/151. And I hope you enjoyed today's episode with Stacey. It was so much fun to interview Stacey. I say this all the time, but I'm really, really appreciative of the women who jump in and join my fertility awareness reality series, because it is not a small thing to come on air and talk to thousands of people you don't know about your bodily fluids. So for me, I've been working in this field for so long that it doesn't seem to be that awkward or uncomfortable. It's really not anymore to talk about things that are super personal and really private in the general sense, because this is the work that I do. So I work with women. We talk about cervical mucus. We talk about sex and timing of sex and all of those topics that are very intimate and personal. And so I just have to kind of take a moment and honor and acknowledge all of the women who've been part of the series, because we're not talking about, walking your dog on a Saturday. We're talking about really personal, intimate parts of your life. And so that's part of the reason why I do this, because I think it's really important to bring these topics to light and to start the dialogue around it. Because at the end of the day, as women, we're going through these experiences anyways. If and when we get to the stage where we're wanting to start a family, if and when we're having all the sex with our partner, but conception isn't happening, it's really important to be able to create spaces for us to talk about these topics in an open, non-judgmental way. And so I really appreciate all the women who are part of the series just to share that. And I know that that's the reason why they jump in and join. They always say, your podcast really helped me. And so I just want to share my story because I know that it's going to help somebody. And of course, in Stacey's case, her story was very profound. I was even taken aback by how swiftly and dramatically she experienced shifts in her digestion, as we talked about, and even the shifts that she experienced in her period pain. And truly, Stacey has jumped right in and made a ton of shifts and changes, like right out of the gate. We spoke about how there's a period of time that she has right now where she's not able to try to conceive. And so she's really jumping in and utilizing that time so that when she moves into the next phase where her doctor gives her the okay to start to try to conceive, she's at the healthiest position possible. And so it's very inspiring just to see how much progress Stacey's made and how she's just jumped right in. And I love her sense of humor about it. I love how she's like, my family just thinks I'm crazy. Don't worry, Stacey. I'm right there with you. But ultimately, what I always say is that your menstrual cycle doesn't lie. And so when you start to see those shifts and changes and improvements in your cycle, it means that you know that you're on the right track. With that being said, I would love to invite you to be part of my 10-week fertility awareness mastery program. I mean, this program is for you if you're wanting to just get right to the point. If you're tired of trying to figure things out on your own, reading this article that tells you to take this thing and that thing, if you really want to have a concrete strategy to help you to move forward. And you don't just want to be shooting in the dark. You want to be using your menstrual cycle as a tool to guide you on this path. And from my experience working with women, when you pay attention to your cycle, you're able to see how different things are impacting your fertility, your health, and all of those different aspects of things. So it's not shooting in the dark. We are using a very specific tool that's very sensitive to the changes that you make and responds real time and gives us lots of feedback to know if we're on the right track. I mean, when you're approaching health challenges naturally, in many ways, there are no quote unquote shortcuts. it's not that you're going to take a vitamin B complex and then all of a sudden your cycle is going to be like 100% amazing. But with that being said, instead of taking several months trial and error trying to figure everything out, we can really focus on what's actually happening in your cycle and get you to where you want to be faster. And with respect to your confidence in charting, I've been doing this for a very long time. And so when my clients are finished, whichever program that they jump in and join, their confidence level it just shoots through the roof because, again, I'm teaching you specific strategies and tools. I'm teaching you a specific language for mucus and bringing all of those years of experience into it to really help you to figure it out super fast so you don't have to go through months and months of trying to sort it out on your own. So for more information about that, make sure to head over to fertilityfriday.com/group program. I would love to have you in the program. There's a limited number of spots available. So make sure if you're listening in real time, it is the first week of August. I still have spaces open, and make sure to apply as soon as you can. So fertilityfriday.com/group program. So I just want to thank you again for hanging out with me today. I podcast for you. I always say this when I started podcasting. I really wasn't sure who was out there listening. I did it to see if anyone would really be interested to find out more about their menstrual cycles. I felt like I had something to offer. I had so much information about this and a really unique experience, because I know from talking to you that there aren't that many people in your lives that know and love fertility awareness and have a good background in it and really understand the significance of it. So I thought, okay, let me share this with the world and see what happens. And I get amazing responses all the time from all of you. So I know you're out there, I know you're listening, and I know that it's making an impact in your lives. So thank you so much for supporting the show. And as always, until next time, be well and happy charting.